There we go. Now we're live. So good evening, and good evening, Austin, who's all the way in, where is it, Connecticut?
Yes,
The other one?
yes. Granby, Connecticut. About 2 hours north of New York.
Right. It's about 10 hours from me then.
Yes.
My plane.
Yeah.
So
no
yes,
one's driving here.
author of these two books so far, which the link is in the chat. If you haven't already got it, I know some of my people have already got it. Franz is here saying evening. Evening, Franz. And yes, so Austin, why Canon?
Well, so really what it comes down to is I fell in love with movies in the video store. I didn't live anywhere near a movie theater, really. It was a rare treat. It was a drive to get to one. So where I watched movies was what we rented every weekend with my father in the 80s. For most of those trips, going to the movie store and picking up a stack and renting stuff with him. And yeah, and Canon was king of the video store. I mean, you know that as well as anybody. Especially here in the US, you couldn't spin around and with your hands out without knocking 5 or 6 Canon tapes off the shelves. Especially if you were in the action section, like that you weren't going to miss their logo.
No.
So really, this project was something that I'd been writing about film for various magazines and online outlets for a while, and I wanted a project I could work on my own, and really trying to think back to where I fell in love with the movies and what kind of set me down this path. It kept coming back to Canon. These were all ninja movies that I rented as a kid. The Chuck Norris and Charles Bronson with my dad at probably too young an age, and it kept coming back to that. And it became a project that when you start to read about a lot of these movies, the Canon made all their movies usually with 2 weeks less shooting time than anybody else would have made the movie with, and half the budget, if not less. And that's a recipe for movies coming together in a way where the stories behind them and the crazy things that happened while they were being made are usually as entertaining as what you see on screen. So it just became a fun project, and it snowballed for me really quick.
Because when did you write the first book?
First book was, I started this project about 2015, and the first book came out in 2020.
Okay. Yeah, because I can tell from the list you had to go through, there is a lot of research involved.
Yeah. They produced a lot of movies. At the peak of the Golden Globus era, the two Israeli cousins who ran the company for the period of Canon that most people seem to think about and love, the 1980s primarily. At the peak, they were releasing almost 60 movies a year in some years, which is crazy.
Yes, it is. Your first book's 80 to 84, and you've already got about 30 something book films plus sequels.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I'll just read off the list. So brace yourselves. The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood, Schizoid, Teen Mothers, Dr. Heckle, Mr. Hype, The Apple, New Year's Evil, Hospital Massacre, Enter the Ninja, Body and Soul, Death Wish 2, 3, 4, Lady Chapley's Lover, Last American Virgin, Championship Season, Treasure of the Four Kings, Nana, 10 to Midnight, House of Long Shadows, Young Warriors, Hercules 1 and 2, Revenge of the Ninja, Wicked Lady, Secret Yolanda, Over the Brooklyn Bridge, Sahara, Breaking 2, Making the Grade, The Naked Face, The Seven Magnificent Gladiators, Sword of the Valiant, Love Streams, Bolero, Exterminate 2, Ninja 3, and 3 Missing in Actions. That's not bad going for one book for a start, and plus they made half of those I don't even know until I read your book that existed. So.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. I hope people will pick them up and read them, and they'll come in there looking for the American Ninja and Death Wish 3 and stumble across some of the films that are really, some of these were forgotten in the video era. Like a lot of these, if it weren't for YouTube, it'd be hard to see them without VHS.
Yes, that's true, because a lot of them I found VHS rips on YouTube or just freed on YouTube. But So yeah. Now I watched a couple of these so far. There's a lot on my list here that I haven't seen. Like I watched The Happy Hooker Goes to Hollywood, just because it was the first, nothing to do with the TNA, which is something staple of all these Canon films.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, mostly action, but they did do a lot of dramas.
Yes, they tried a little bit of everything. Musicals. The one people ask me, what did they do? And a Western is the only one. And just because the 80s were a bad time for Westerns, and they had made Westerns in the 70s before they bought Canon, and they had trouble with them. So I think they had learned by then. But really, any other genre, any other section of the video store you would have gone to, you could have found a Canon movie at some point.
Yeah. So Fran says he's bought both books in hardback recently. They were both amazingly well researched, though somewhat daunting. A lot of films to get through. That is very true. You must have, no wonder it took so long because not only do you track the film down and watch it, and then research the film and the making of, and then interview someone that was involved in the film.
Yeah, it's
well done.
Thank you. I'm lucky to have very entertaining subject matter. That's these movies. Most of them are fun, and again, they were made under conditions that were kind of crazy, and it makes it fun to seek out the people and just to hear the stories of what went into making these films. And some of them, the idea was come up with Breakin' being a great example, where Breakin' 12 weeks went by from the idea of let's do a breakdance movie to it being the #1 movie in theaters.
That's crazy.
12 weeks writing, editing, promoting it. It's great. But that's the Canon way of doing things. They did things very, very fast.
Yeah. It was the older writing something down on a napkin and then giving it away and say, "Here's some money, make this film."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's Screen International, the trade industry magazine. I always love going through the old 80s issues because they would be at the Cannes Film Festival and Malcolm would make a deal on a napkin, like you mentioned, and Screen International would run a copy of the napkin as a news item. And it's amazing to see these because they are just scribbled notes with, a few hastily written bullet points and, some signatures on it.
Yeah. I'm not sure how legally binding they were, but yeah.
Considering how many of those movies did not end up going into production, I don't think they were too legally binding.
Yeah. No one mentioned Spider-Man.
Oh. The Spider-Man, Canon Spider-Man would have, any version of it. That's one that went through many different incarnations and ultimately was never made. But
yeah. We got some stuff was they got as far as the teaser trailer, didn't they? And casting
and building sets, actually. Yeah. Cyborg. A lot of what we see in the movie Cyborg is stuff leftover half-built sets from Spider-Man. There's a great scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme is fighting Vincent Klein in the rain, and they're supposed to be down in the southern United States at that point, but the set behind him looks like a New York City facade, the brownstone and the fire hydrants and things like that. And that's because it was the Daily Bugle. They're fighting in front of the Daily Bugle, what was going to be the Daily Bugle before Canon ran out of money to keep paying for that license.
That's a shame. People now would have loved to have seen it. Back then, not so much.
No. We almost got a Michael Winner Captain America. So that's something in an alternate universe I would love to.
Captain America, this recent version did need more TNA and sexual abuse.
Yeah. There would have been a lot more of that in there.
Yeah. So, Fran says you liked the interview with David Mendenhall that you did, which is the over the top one.
Yeah. Thank you. David was awesome individual, and I'm really grateful he was willing to share those stories, because he again, as somebody who grew up in the 80s, outside of Over the Top, of the movie that I loved back when I was a kid, he was the voice he was on Transformers. He was one of the voices. I mean, the Berenstain Bears cartoon, all of these different things that I remember as a child. So it was cool getting to track him down and talk to him for that.
Because I was going to ask about, because some of your interviews are people that are off the grid nowadays, and do you do them by the phone or do you just video chat?
It's a mix. Most of them, the bulk of them, by the phone. Occasionally, like we are now, if it's Skype or Zoom or something like that, because it's nice to see the person you're talking to. But yeah, the bulk of them. There's a few that were done by email. Some people were kind of shy about their their answers. They want time to think over through things like that. So there were some people who preferred him that way. But yeah, David was over the phone, and again, he was great. And there's actually, he'll be in a longer interview, another one with him in Volume 3, because he was in 2 more Canon movies after Over the Top. He was in one called Going Bananas, which is
dear.
the talking monkey movie, and he was in one called Secret of the Ice Cave, which he's older. He grew up a bit between those, so he's playing a teenage role. So, but he's solving a mystery down in South America, which is kind of fun, kind of change.
Yeah, because you got Lucinda Dickey as well, because she has disappeared from the limelight since, what was it? She made 3 films.
Yeah, 4 films, 3 for Canon, and she did Cheerleader Camp, which was
that's where I saw it last.
A horror film, and then left acting behind. She's now very, very successful. She works in real estate and has done. It's amazing because a lot of these people who they worked for Canon, but maybe their careers wound down after that, or they kind of got out of the film business. A lot of these people have gone on to very successful second careers or different careers, and it's interesting to learn that too. Someone I think of, Melody Anderson, who I interviewed for Firewalker, but she's in Flash Gordon, but she's now a therapist, a psychologist, and she's very, very well respected in that area. And it's cool to see what people can be talented at more than one thing. Yeah,
that's true. Because I've interviewed, was it Sam Furstenberg, who did the forward on your book, and Stephen Lambert, who I think unfortunately passed away this year, didn't he? In the summer,
very recently, heartbreaking.
Yeah, because he was great. Well, especially his filmography of what he's done is amazing.
Yeah. You watch some of Steve's stunts in these movies, and they're scary. They're scary to watch. He was a very brave man.
Yes, because what's it, the American Ninja one, when he does the bike jump, and then they left it in where he smashes his face on the front. You think, why just leave that in?
So I can't of his stunts, because he does this great sort of part where he's playing the stunt for the lead there, but he's on like a bar on the scaffolding around the Statue of Liberty and hanging from it, and that's hundreds of feet above the ground, and he's doing that. Like it's terrifying.
Yeah, I wouldn't get me up there, even with a load of cables. Dr. Impossible's here. He's here for the Canon's highbrow stuff, like gore.
Those will be in Volume 3. Those are coming up.
Coming up soon. Master Eat is here. Evening, gents. Fran says, I also like the chapter about the films that Canon didn't really make. Yes, because people are saying stuff like, that's part. Is it halfway through the second book? Is it where you stop and say, Cobra, Highlander, and such are not Canon films?
Yeah, and that's thank you for that. And that's something that I had to put in there. I had to put in there because I know people would pick up the book and look for Cobra. Cobra is especially one, or Highlander. Those are 2 that I really had to emphasize. But Canon is a company that Yep. They distributed a lot of stuff. Their entire catalog, outside of the stuff they made, at its peak, especially after they purchased Thorny MI. So like 87, they had about 1,100 films in their catalog. and would have been released somewhere in some part of the world, the Canon logo on it. So
Yeah,
I had to set very hard boundaries over what I will include, what I can include, and what I can't include. Otherwise, this would be a 40 volume that I would never finish in my life.
Yeah, because before I saw your book, earlier in the year I was looking at a list. I thought, I'll have a look at what Canon films, and then there's Canon films they made, there's Canon films they produced, there's Canon films they released in certain countries, and there's Canon. It's just crazy what they did.
Yeah, it's really, they did a little bit of everything. I mean, I look at some of the distribution catalogs over here, but these giant, thick, spiral bound books, and they'll have all the Rambo movies in there and things like that because they distributed them in Germany or something like that.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things that I'll get a question every now and then. It's like, why didn't you cover Buckaroo Banzai? And I was like, well, because that only had anything to do with a Canon in Spain or something along those lines. But it'll be from a reader in Spain. So,
well, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? When they said I saw it and it said Canon on it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's, especially here in the United States, a lot of Canon fans don't realize that Canon was also a gigantic owner of theater chains in Europe. And if I'm talking to anybody in the UK, they'll usually remember, Canon Cinemas. They know them for their movie theaters as well as the movies they distributed and produced.
Yes. Yeah, I remember London in the 80s. Every street had a Canon cinema on it.
They owned a lot of them, and I mean, it was the same deal in Italy. They owned a very large chain. In the Netherlands, actually, I think they were something like 80% of the movie theaters through acquisitions, which is why you suddenly get movies like Dutch Treat and Field of Honor, which are Dutch co-productions, because they own all of these movie theaters now in the Netherlands. We better shoot some movies in Dutch to fill them. And that's just the way they did business a lot of the time.
Yes, because they're not mentioned in the title credits. Are they of Highlander?
On certain VHS copies, it depends on where the copy came from and what you're because even here in the US, Fox had already put it out in theaters before Canon even bought the Thorny MI. So it would come with the Fox logo at the 20th Century Fox logo when you would see it here. But in some places they distribute theatrically the VHS copies. Here you would see, at least for the time that Canon owned them, you would have the Fox logo removed and the Canon put in there. So it's, again, in the US here, because of deals that they were in and companies they bought, and you would get things. My video store's copy of Evil Dead 2, of the Evil Dead and Terminator 2 had the Canon logo on them, and those are movies that in no world are they Golden Globus production. they're far too well made. And
oh,
well,
that is true. Because the only time is that they appear first in the titles of Cobra, isn't it? They just say, because it says on the back produced by, and then they get
they are actually listed as producers in the opening credits.
Yeah.
Of Cobra, and that was I go over in the books but they needed to get around Stallone's over the top deal to make that movie.
Of course. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Right. So where are we? I've only seen the Cinema Snobs version of Going Bananas, where he's talking about that, and that's all I need to see. I don't need to see the whole film. God bless you for watching it.
The monkey's voice. You'll never once you hear it, it'll never leave your brain.
Who's the other guy? Is it Bud Spencer in that one?
Dom DeLuise.
Dom DeLuise, yeah. I always confuse those two because I think Bud Spencer's in some of the early ones.
Bud Spencer was actually the original casting. Like, he was supposed to be in it. So some of the very early posters you'll see, or advertisements that Canon made, it's Bud Spencer. And at that time, it was called Ben Bonzo Big Bad Joe.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing, because a lot of these films have different names depending on which country you're in as well, don't they? So, like Teen Mothers is also called Seed of Innocence. Hospital Massacre is also known as X-Ray. Nana is also known as Nana, the true key of pleasure, which its subject matter is a bit risque. Oh,
yeah, they would change these, even movies that they didn't make. One of the things that Canon did, well, Globus did when they bought Canon, is Canon was a distributor that had been around since 1966, 67, and they had put out a bunch of movies. What Golden Globus did is take a lot of those films, give them new titles, and then sell the video rights, sell them, just resell them for distribution and things like that. But you would get a movie that, one famous example was a movie. It was a small independent drama called Sam's Song, and it had Robert De Niro. It was one of his earliest roles. Very, very brief screen time, and so Golden Globus shot some new scenes to pad it out. New scenes with Sybil Danning in it, retitled The Swap, and then put Robert De Niro big on the poster and as the top billed credits. And this was a movie that at that point was 13 years old, and again was not a Robert De Niro film. It was something he had a small, like, sort of tiny part in, but they resold it as a new De Niro movie to fundraise money. That's how they built a lot of the money they used to buy the company, by gutting and retitling and selling its film catalog.
What's your take on Mascara that Canon produced? It's a sleazy little number.
Whew, yeah.
I've heard of this one. No wonder Dr. Impossible knows it, though.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That's one that I have not written the chapter on yet. I've got the tape here, and it's one that I've been kind of putting off because there's some kind of landmines I have to walk around involving that one. So that's yeah. It's some of the subject matter is going to be tricky to write about in 2024.
Okay.
when I'm finishing that one up.
We'll leave that as Greg's here, fanzine.
Hey,
friend of yours.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. That's awesome.
Brands, yeah. Cardiff, big city, yeah. Canon. It was ABC, then Canon, then back to ABC in the 90s. Yeah, I remember a lot of the one sheets, the adverts in the newspaper where film coming out this weekend, Canon cinema, and then all over the place. 100 miles from where I was, but I think Canon films, cinemas. But 101 Bronson, he is a Canon fan.
Awesome. I love the icon.
Yeah, it's a really good drawing out.
My Bronson pistol back here.
Nice. So evening chat. Hang on. What were we talking about?
Oh, Highlander.
Highlander.
I can see I can guess from that. Yeah, there's a great book actually by Jonathan Melville that's some kind of magic, and it's just complete history of Highlander, the movie, and I love it. He's since done a book on Local Hero, the movie, and it's also excellent. So Jonathan Melville, great film historian, great author. And I would definitely, for any Highlander fans, I would suggest, if you haven't yet, check out Some Kind of Magic, his book on that movie.
Yeah. Canon pushed the boundary with fairy tales set in Israel. The one I remember is Hansel and Gretel with David Warner, Christopher Walken in Puss in Boots. Yes, I've heard of these before.
Yes, the Canon movie tales. Yes, there were 9 of them. So this was another result of Canon having really these large chains of movie theaters, not in the US, but across Europe and Israel, Italy, Netherlands, and the UK. And really, they didn't have anything to fill the matinee spots. the kids matinees in the morning. So it was a lot of, in those days, especially in the mid 80s, there was a lot of re-releases of Disney movies. The older animated movies would get cycled every few years and re-released. And Golden Globus saw that this is money that, you know, they're leaving on the table. This is something they could make their own Disney style movies as these public domain fairy tale musicals. And so they announced the Canon Movie Tales, and it was going to be this gigantic line. I think they initially announced 16 of them. They only ended up making 9, but they were made all pretty much, most of them around the same, in their studio facilities in Israel. And the formula was similar. They would bring in 1 or 2 big name stars, somebody, and then the rest of the cast would be played by, you know, a lot of the local Israeli film industry actors that Canon and Golden Globes had worked for years and years. And they would churn these movies out, and it's fun to watch them back to back if you can handle it.
Yeah,
because they recycle so much of the stuff. Sets from one princess in one movie will be reused as the sets for, you know, another princess's room. There's fairy tales have a lot of very interchangeable and reusable costumes, armor, things like that. So those are actually ones that they made them. They released them from 86 through about 89, I think, when the last one came out. But they were all made rapid succession. But I ended up pushing those to the 3rd book because the bulk of them came out from 88 onward, and they're just, I ran out of room. Something there was a limit on what I could actually print in the 2nd volume. So that chapter got pushed to the 3rd. But it's they're interesting to watch because, again, you do get like Christopher Walken playing Puss in Boots. You got, you know, Christopher Walken, who was initially going to be in a movie with Al Pacino called Investigation, which fell through. Then he was cast in River of Death, which fell through, and the role went to Michael Dudikoff instead. And he ended up doing Puss in Boots instead. He had his Canon contract, and that got him out of it. And it's, you get a lot of things like that. You get Isabella Rossellini showing up. You have, yeah, you mentioned David Warner. You have Cloris Leachman, Amy Irving, and Rumpelstiltskin. Billy Barty's in a bunch of them. They're fun. They're not childhood classics. They're not going to be held on the same pedestal as these old animated Disney films, but I think for something that they shot very quickly in, you know, essentially a warehouse in Israel, they achieved that goal, and they achieved that low bar they set for themselves.
There you go. Content for content's sake. Now, I didn't know this until I read your book, that there are 2 Bond actors in films, Sean Connery and Roger Moore, and I've never even heard of the films. Where am I? The Naked Face with Roger Moore, and Sword of the Valiant, The Legend of Sir Gawain, and The Green Knight with Sean Connery.
Yeah. So, yeah, both of those were cases of Canon was just sort of able to get these guys at the right time. The Naked Face was a project that they approached Roger Moore and asked him, this is something that Canon did. This was something how they got a lot of their big stars to come in. What do you want to make? And how can you work with us? And The Naked Face was a project. It was a novel that he had been excited about. And it's directed by a friend of his. So it's something that it was a passion project. And it's something that a bigger studio wasn't ready to back, and Canon was. So that's how you get that. Sort of the Valiant is a fun one because it's Sean Connery's only in it for a little bit, but his screen time it's a significant amount, but for the actual shooting time he was basically just there for in and out to film his scenes. But Sean Connery famously, he's worn some amazing costumes. I think of Zardos as being one of the peak Sean Connery film outfits, costumes. But in Sword of the Valiant, he plays the Green Knight, and he's got this wig. He's got green glitter in the wig and his beard, and it's got horns on it. He's got this bright green, like emerald armor, but it's got a hole cut out in the chest, almost like the shape of the Superman like logo.
All right.
But so you can see it's like a window to look at his green. He's got green glitter in his chest hair. It's just it's one of those things that I have a lot of respect for Sean Connery for showing up and not thinking like, this is ridiculous and just walking. And he does it. He does a good, he does, he gives his all in this role that he clearly just shot in a couple days.
Yeah. Wasn't it Highlander? He just did 1 or 2 weeks of shooting.
Yeah.
All of the Highlander film. So yeah.
Yeah. The, Sword of the Valiant was done on a weekend when he was off. He had the weekend off of filming his Bond movie when he went back.
I'll never say never again.
Yes. So it was done on a weekend that, but his son ended up being inside. He ended up being involved with some of the Canon movie tales, taking him back to that. Jason Connery. Nope.
I mean, say hello. Oof. Before you go to bed. Austin's all the way over in America. Wave to him.
Hello.
Right, get to bed.
Mine are just about to get off the bus, my kids. So
yes,
I would not be surprised if I'm keeping in the door here soon.
Yeah, bedtime here. Right. Now, it's going to come up at some point, but yeah, Jeff says Over the Top is his favorite Canon film and one of the most underrated Stallone films. Always loved that film, never understood the hate. It's an absolutely great film to me, so yeah. It says Canon on my tape, so
yes,
I saw this in the cinema, so yeah.
That's as about as Canon as a movie as they get. That's directed by Menachem Golan and himself. Canon's one of the two cousins who ran the company. But yeah, I don't understand the hate either. I'm a big fan of Over the Top.
Yeah, it's got a great soundtrack. It's a great story, and
excellent.
Yeah, how much did Stallone get for it? It was like a third of the budget, or
12 million. 12 million. He was very briefly the highest paid actor for a single role in Hollywood, and that was for what Stallone got for Over the Top. And yeah, it's a role that at that time was very different for him too.
Yeah,
it was risky to pay that much to Stallone and make his main adversary a little boy for the most part. And I think that's pretty bold. And it does the impossible, and it makes arm wrestling look exciting on camera.
It does.
It's something that it's a sport. I mean, it is a sport. I don't want to offend. I will say that any arm wrestling professionals that might be listening right now, but it's as a sport. When you're filming it's very easy for it to just look like two people holding hands and grunting and like gritting their teeth. And this, again, that was where it was great too. I mean, Stallone was there on sets, and he would be able to advise Menachem Golan because he had made the Rocky movies. If you're going to make a fight scene, if you're going to make something look exciting, that's the guy who really has so much great experience there, and that he's willing to share, and Golan was willing to take that advice. So it was something that I think it's very well done. I am a big fan of Over the Top. I've been for a long time, and yeah, it was a very fun chapter to write.
Lincoln Hawk will fight for his son the only way he knows how, with his one big arm.
No, and it's a fun one too, because that's a movie that the history is very deep. I mean, it was essentially there's a vigilante film called The Farmer starring Gary Conway from the late 70s, and it was originally going to be a follow-up from that. I get into this in the book, but this was meant to be the follow-up to as a hard R follow-up to this movie, and it was just rewritten so many times and changed so much that it went from being this very violent movie to being this very family friendly arm wrestling father-son bonding adventure, or whatever, however you want to categorize it. It's a great, very circuitous history of how we got from The Farmer, this R-rated project, to Over the Top. It took almost 10 years.
So yeah, the link is in the chat again. If anyone wants to check out the books, they are well worth it.
Thank you.
So, a little sad La Brava with Dustin Hoffman wasn't made. It sounded promising.
Yes, that's another one of the big Canon. It's a project I've been working on for a long time. This won't be until after the third one's finished, but I've been compiling all of the ads and all of the movies they announced, scripts that I have, pitch books that I have, and things like that, but never got made. And it's somewhere about 180 projects right now that I have record of in some way or another, which is wild. These are things that were advertised or mocked and sold to people, and they never got there. And La Brava is one of the big ones. That's one of the ones that they spent a lot of money on. Dustin Hoffman's contract numbers were never officially released, but it included. Basically it was bigger than Stallone's Over the Top had it gone through, because it also included a percentage of the film, like a large percentage of the movie, which is crazy. It would have been Stallone's like reign upon the throne of being the highest paid actor would have been very, very brief if that had gone through. But yeah, an Elmore Leonard script. They had some great directors at least talking about it, because you have Francis Ford Coppola was somebody who was like briefly considered, but he was working on Peggy Sue Got Married at the time and couldn't make it work. Hal Ashby was somebody that was in talks. The Canon had actually approached Martin Scorsese about it, and Scorsese said no. But I do love that this was at least a project that had enough, enough juice behind it that they could at least talk to Scorsese and like bring it to him, and
Yeah,
for him to take a meeting with Canon. And that's but yeah, it was something that the long story short, or based on an Elmore Leonard book. That's too. It had an Elmore Leonard script, which is incredible. But what they did is Dustin Hoffman had a very specific clause in his contract that they couldn't do any marketing or any use of his image without his approval. And Canon, being Canon and not doing any, never really stopping to think, as soon as they had it all worked out, pending the director, they took out 2-page ad in all the trade ads with Dustin Hoffman's face, the words, "Welcome Dustin Hoffman to the Canon family."
Oh dear.
And Dustin Hoffman ripped it up and did not want to do it. Yeah, it's too bad, because it was, I'm a big Elmore Leonard fan, outside of Canon fan, and so it's a shame, because that would have been a fun one to see.
Yeah, did we get Ishtar instead?
Timing wise, I have to think about that, but yeah, I
think mid 80s.
Yeah, we're talking 86 now, so
okay. Giancarlo Predy, remember that name? What a flipping carry on. $275 million purchase of The Sinners back in the day. Makes you wonder how Canon stumped up the cash. Yeah, well.
Yeah, whew. Yeah, Predy is a name you'll read a lot in Volume 3, because he's
okay.
Really came in and with some very shady money, and bought up a lot of different film production companies, and with very little intention of actually making films. He also bought MGM, which is just wild to think that Canon, MGM, 21st Century, all of these different Pathé were all owned by one guy who was not a movie mogul. He was a mobster. That's really how it
allegedly.
But allegedly, yes, allegedly. And it's really, I mean, he is a very important figure in the third book, because if he hadn't come in when he did, the Canon would have been dead in the water by 89. There would not be anything. And so he is the reason that they kept going for another 5 years, really, before the company folded. But was not the same company. Like before and after him, they're very much, you have a lot of the same names involved, but you also have a very big exodus of canon folks who really were involved in a lot of the movies, that the most beloved eras of the company.
Right. Yeah. So I guess Superman 4 is in the third book, isn't it?
It's in the second one. It's in
second
volume 2. Yeah.
I was reading the end. I was reading the end of my first section there. I could scroll down to help.
Yeah.
There it is.
After he said never again to the Salkinds, I think that never again that a lot of those actors said were specifically to the Salkinds. Even Mario Kidder, somebody who felt very disrespected by what happened and what happened to Richard Donner in the earlier movies and how he was treated. That when it went to another company and that company was writing paychecks, they were willing to do it. I think it had more to do with the former producers than not wanting to do Superman.
Right. Yeah. I can see that, because a lot of them said they didn't like the Salkinds, and then the same way a lot of people say they don't like the Canon group either. So
and Reeve, somebody that to get him to come back, because he wasn't going to do it again. They bankrolled Street Smart, which was a great movie, but it was something that also that it was his passion project. He was shopping it. He was trying to get it made, and people weren't doing it because he wasn't. They didn't see him as a star outside when he wasn't wearing the cape and tights.
Yeah,
and Canon, if you put those cape and tights back on, we'll do your other movie.
And bury it. Yes, because the second book covers 85 to 87. And then we get, right, here we go. The Ambassador, Maria's Lover, Hot Resort, Hot Chili, the Assisi Underground, Rappin', Grace Quigley, Ordeal by Innocence, Deja Vu, Life Force, Thunder Alley, American Ninja 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Invasion USA, Matty Hari, King Solomon Wine, Alan Quartermain, Lost City Gold, Fool for Love, Runaway Train, Delta Force 1, 2, 3, America 3000, POW, The Escape, Murphy's Law, Dangerously Close, Invaders from Mars, Robotech, the movie, Detective School Dropouts, and Dutch Treat, Salom, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Othello, Avenging Force, Berlin Affair, Kimura, 52, Pickup, Firewalker, Duet for 1, Field of Honor, Assassination, Over the Top, Number 1 with a Bullet, Down Twisted, Street Smart, The Hannah Hilton, Aladdin, The Barbarians, Too Much, The Robot with a Heart, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Master Universe, Penitentiary 3, Tough Guys Don't Dance, Surrender, Dancers, Barfly, Undercover, 3 Kinds of Heat. Now, again, only about half of those I know, so I will have to check out some of those. But yeah, that's even bigger than the first lot, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it covers fewer years, but those were very, very busy years, and that's even taking out 9 children's movies they made and pushing them to volume 3.
Right, because Master of the 80s asked about the adaptation of Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah, the Rusty Lemarant and replaced by Albert Pune on that one, and that's in volume 3. That's something
I didn't see it on the list.
Yeah,
it's under a different name.
That one's a fun chapter because it's also sort of kind of in a very, very out of nowhere way. It's also linked to Alien from LA, which is the Albert Pune movie with Kathy Ireland, and those movies both. I mean, they were filmed on a lot of the same sets with most of the same actors, but they kind of take place in a shared universe, which is fun, and it's something. It was a movie that Canon they put money into. They advertised, I think, starting back in like 1985, and things didn't work out. They weren't pleased with what the budget was looking at, and so they shelved it and they canned it for a while. And then when they needed money, They had Albert Pune, who is a great director for working under Canon conditions in short amount of time with whatever budget he's given, and they had him finish it, essentially film more scenes and kind of recraft it. But in that same time, he also did Alien from LA, which is amazing.
Yes, I saw that for the first time last year, I think, because I didn't know one of those I didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where we go. Life Force is Franz's favorite. Can't decide if it was classified as a guilty pleasure or a generally great film. It's so much not just for the obvious reasons. Yes, it was quite a shocking film when I first saw it.
Yeah,
seeing Patrick Stewart kissing a man. I can't think of any other reason it'd be shocking, apart from some of the posters that are a bit risque, aren't they?
Yes, it's a movie. I mean, it's one of these things that Canon. I mean, Toby Hooper, who they made 3 movies with him during their heyday, and with increasingly strained relationship. Yeah. But Life Force is a movie that they let him have the budget he wanted, make the movie he wanted, and it's something that I think the biggest mistake that Canon made with that film, and I think still to this day taints like the way people look at it, is calling it Life Force. It was shot under the title Space Vampires.
Yeah.
Which is about as lowbrow a title as you can get, but it's much more fitting. I think they looked at Cocoon and like these 80s sci-fi movies that had these very sort of serious tones, and they wanted to make something very intellectual out of it, or something highbrow. But it's a movie where you've got a naked space lady running around, draining their life forces and turning them into these amazing looking practical corpses. And I think Toby Hooper hated that. He hated that too. He wanted to call it Space Vampires. The original novel was called Space Vampires. Yeah. I think people, if they went into a movie called Space Vampires, you have different set of expectations than if you go into a sci-fi film called Life Force. So again, it's a fun one. It's really a dream team of like 80s people working out. You have Nick Maley, who, designed Yoda and the Cantina aliens, doing all the practical effect, all the monsters and makeup and animatronic corpses and corpse puppets and things like that are so cool looking. You have John Dykstra, working on it, who then again another guy from Star Wars. You have just all of these incredible. It's written by Dan O'Bannon of just incredible group of people, and it's perfect movie, but I do feel that it would better remember, or at least in a more positive light, if it were still Space Vampires, because I mean, that's just a fun title.
Yeah, it's a film called Space Vampires. You know exactly what you're going to get. This doesn't even mention Canon, this re-release. But
it's unfortunate. The logo does seem to get scrubbed from when you watch some of these movies nowadays, from the whether it's the stream on whatever streaming service or on DVD or something like that. Occasionally, these companies do clip off that beautiful Canon logo and song.
Yeah, Toby. So the 3 that Invaded from Mars. It's a ranked film down there, and then it's got the Canon logo on the side. But yeah, I don't have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but because that's another thing they were famous for, taking original or making sequels to other stories. So like the Happy Hookers one. Yeah,
that's the 3rd Happy Hooker movie.
Yeah,
the second through 4th Death Wish movies.
Death Wish,
The Exterminator 2, they did not make
the 2,
one. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, they did not make the first one.
Yeah.
Superman 4.
Oh, yes. How could I forget? Oh, yeah. Because what's the I saw America 3000 the other day. Yeah, because you got to interview
Oh.
Automan himself. He seemed quite happy to talk about it.
Yeah, America 3000. That's a movie for somebody somewhere, one of these Blu-ray labels to take it and piece it together. That's a movie that was released a very limited release, but had a different sound, had different narration and everything. The director actually, he talks about it a bit I interviewed the writer director of that one, and it was a movie that spent a long time in the Canon offices in post-production, re-recording voiceover, having a different edit, have a soundtrack, like a much more rock and roll soundtrack, and that printed theatrically. But to which is where most people, it was the stuff that was the placeholder stuff, the stuff he had spent all this time replacing.
Right.
So it's a very, very cheesy post-apocalyptic comedy, but I do feel like it hasn't gotten a chance, at least. Somebody needs to scan the theatrical print and release that one on Blu-ray.
Yes,
along with the because even it was put out here in the US by Shout Factory on a DVD a few years ago, and even that was the incorrect soundtrack. So someday.
Yeah. Free on YouTube. It wasn't that bad a quality, but like you said, it's the voiceover and the soundtrack don't really suit the film.
No, and that's all we have right now, unfortunately.
Speaking of Coppola, I saw his name associated with the Canon film Barfly. What was his role in that?
So Coppola produced several Canon films. He actually was friendly with Menachem, the actor for Roger Corman. So back on a movie called Young Racers. So they kind of both came from that same tree, that family tree. So many people came out of Corman in the 60s. Working on his Fast and Furious B movies, but Coppola produced Barfly. He produced Tough Guys Don't Dance, another directed film with Wings Hauser and late Ryan O'Neal, and he directed Powakatsi, the Godfrey Reggio film. Canon actually released that which that's a movie a lot of people don't realize is a Canon film. That's one of two Canon movies in the Criterion collection.
Oh, there they are.
But Francis Ford Coppola's his involvement in those movies for the most part was very much in name, but in name alone, because his company, there was a producer there called named Tom Luddy, who worked for American Zoetrope and brought some projects to Canon, put some projects together. Tom Luddy was the one who brought he worked on Barfly with Barbet Schroeder and Charles Bukowski, and he was kind of a very hands-on producer for that and got it to Canon. He also worked on King Lear for them when they were working with Godard, Jean-Luc Godard on his King Lear. Menachem wanted somebody to help put him in touch with Norman Mailer, so the Norman Mailer could write the script to that. And Tom Luddy was the guy who, he was friends with Norman Mailer, so they could call him up, and that's what led to Tough Guys Don't Dance.
Oh yes.
So yeah, Francis Ford Coppola is somebody who, again, he actually was up. He was interested in directing La Brava, the unmade Dustin Hoffman picture for Canon, but he was just too busy at the time. The timeline wasn't going to work out. So he was there were a lot of big names you'd think that wouldn't associate with Golan Globus and Canon, but Coppola was somebody who was friendly. Like they were friends.
Nice. So, Canon on the label, Year of the Dragon.
Mhm. So distribution, yeah, that's one that you go through the old Canon catalogs, and it would be some territories listed. So
Yeah, it's because I was looking at the
that's
Thorny
cool.
MI
That's
labels of some VHS tapes, and then, of course, the re-release was like Canon, the big label instead.
mhm. Mhm. Yeah, when Canon acquired Thorny MI, one of their first orders of business was what movies do we have that we can sell more tapes for? Let's put out as many of those as we can. So again, here in the US, Evil Dead, Terminator 2, not Terminator 2, but Terminator, excuse me,
Yeah.
and all sorts of odds and ends, but have the Canon logo on the corner of the tape, which is just funny because they don't have anything to do with Canon other than Canon's. Oh yeah, Robert Hayes.
All right, we'll try this one.
One of the
Hellbound,
last
this is
Canon
Canon.
movies right there.
Yeah.
One of the
Aeronauts,
very
okay,
last
yeah.
ones.
And you can see why.
That's Chuck Norris versus the Devil.
Yeah, that's the best thing about it.
That's how you sell
win.
someone on that one. Oh yeah.
It's put a spoiled it, put him in it. What does often put the fascination people still have with Canon down to? The personalities and the films combined, the crazy stories related to the personalities involved that have helped too. Yeah, so
Those are all very good reasons. There's the nostalgia. That's what brought me to it in the first place. If you grew up, video store was a big part of your life during that era. That's you like those movies. Or in the US, I don't know as much about how it was elsewhere, but the premium movie channels in the US, people would watch these movies on camera because mid 1980s, AO needed to fill all their hours with something, and so the movies like Hot Chili or Happy Hooker Goes Hollywood that would be playing every night, all night. So you have people who love those movies because they remember having insomnia or turning it on around time and seeing Too Much with the Robot with a Heart and thinking like, am I the person who remembers this movie? And I mean, it's again he nailed all the elements, like all of these things that tie into it. The stories behind the making of these that go into the making of these movies are as really as crazy as the films themselves a lot of the time. And so that's something very personally what appeals to me as what drives me to put all this time into researching and tracking down people to talk to them about the films, because anybody who worked for Canon in whatever capacity or however brief, they have at least one, if not many, crazy, like fun stories that they'll lean in and they'll say, this is, you're not going to believe this. And I've heard so many stories from Canon veterans that opened with, you're not going to believe this, that I get really excited to hear those at every time, and to just keep seeking them out. I've been at this for almost 10 years, and I've got 1,000. I mean, about 1,700 pages across just the first 2 volumes, and it's just a drop in the bucket. I probably
like
have
Harry
learned
Potter,
like 10%.
Because I've got this old tape. I think this is one of the lemon popsicles.
Oh,
this is pre-Canon, but it's produced
that's
by
an
Golden
amazing
Globe.
artwork on that too.
Yes.
Wow, is that a rank tape? Is that right?
Yeah, it's an old Rental. Hang on, I'll make it
That's
bigger.
cool. I've actually never seen that particular art, I don't think. That's very cool.
Yeah, this is the low budget release. But yeah, 18 certificate, sex comedy. Oh yeah, there you go. It does mention lemon popsicle. It doesn't mention a year anywhere. It's 84 minutes and 1 second. It's by Boaz Davidson directed it, so he's in a lot of their stuff, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
yeah, he's somebody that Canon had a stable of directors and actors that would come back, writers that they worked with a lot, and Boaz Davidson is one of the main guys that even, I mean, before they came to Hollywood, he was making films for them, but he founded the company that became Millennium. So it's kind of amazing that, this guy who was with Canon for the whole time is now, the Expendables franchise and the producer of all these
I did see that
big action. Canon is kind of like the descendants of Canon.
Yeah. Now, see, my Red Sonja has got Canon all over it, but again, I guess it's they are not mentioned on the credits, so that doesn't count. Because I was going to say Arnie, did that. Stallone did Over the Top and Cobra, and Steve Van Damme did.
Pardon me while I reach off camera for
a
second. I'm going to
Cyborg, because that is Golden Globus, but it doesn't mention Canon anywhere, but Canon producer. But then I got my Bloodsport, which has the Canon logo on it.
Oh yeah,
which is book
that's
3.
Classic. That's
that's
one I'm excited. That's a large chapter, but it's one of the ones that Canon post 1988 or later. That's the big ones, headliners. The rise of Van Damme.
Yeah, that's going to be
just for example. This is a one distribution catalog. So this is actually pre-Thorny MI. So the 350 films that they got on a few pages. It's
nice.
Really thick. There are 8 movies per page.
Oh.
But that's where you'll find the Red Sonja and stuff would be in your mid territories.
Yes.
Like we can sell it where you
are. Right, where am I? I've lost the chat. Oh, you're frozen. There you go. I'm back again. Oh, I forgot to mention the Boogaloo documentary, because there's 2 documentaries, isn't there? The Canon own one, and then there's the Electric Boogaloo one.
Mm-hmm. But you got to watch them both. They're one is produced by Golden Globus, and it is a little bit. I mean, it's very run. Nothing. No one's going to say anything bad about them in there, obviously. But and it's got so much great. They've got access to people in there, and they've got some great stories and some great behind the scenes footage because it is made with their backing. And then you've got Electric Boogaloo, which has all these amazing interviews and a lot of people that had, some bones to pick with Canon. But it's incredibly entertaining, and you do get some crazy stories. But yeah, Lorraine Landon, I think she burns her copy of the movie, or tries to in that documentary. But yeah, they're like definitely see Electric Boogaloo and then see Go-Go Boys.
Yeah. Have you reached out to any of the either Golem or Globus? Because I know one of them's still just producing movies.
Yeah. Well, so Menachem passed away in 2014.
Yeah.
But Yoram, I haven't had any luck. Maybe someday. Yeah. Fingers crossed. I've reached out. I've tried. If there's anyone missing in the books, if there are any, it's not for lack of trying. It's they're just cases of either striking out, being able to reach somebody, or there are a lot of people who would respectfully decline, which is I respect. Like it's one of those
Yeah.
things that if you don't want to talk about that period, there are people that Canon launched a lot of careers, but there are also a lot of people who, they burned and are bitter about it. And I think they feel can't say anything nice. It's not worth going on the record and airing all that laundry. So it is what it is. There are so many interviews that I hope still someday. When the second book came out, I did hear back from some people that I didn't think I would ever get that were interested. I think because they saw that the first book was a real it was something they could look at and like, okay, this is what it is. It's not something to take down the company or just to just to make fun of these movies, because I'm looking at his film history and I'm trying to chronicle that the best I can.
Yeah, that's okay. But at the hour mark, are you still all right to carry on for a bit?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Pardon me. I'm just grabbing some water.
You carry on. And then you can answer this technical question on how Canon cut a deal with Thorn EMI to distribute the UK home video market. Yeah, that's how I saw most of their stuff was on VHS, because we only had 3 or 4 channels back then, and we didn't have satellite TV till the 90s-ish.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these deals were done at either the American film markets, the Cannes Film Festival, or MIFED in Italy every year. And it's, in most cases, it's not just one deal that you can point at. You can look at where they would go to a company that, even in the case of like a major film release or something like the Rambo movies or Year of the Dragon or something like that, and they would ask, where haven't you distributed this yet? Where haven't you sold this? Like, we'll do that for. And it's something that they were very good at that. You can find Canon tapes and with different artwork and in most countries that had widespread home video and video rental markets. And that was another big part of their business model. That was, you have the making the films, and that's just part of it. You have the big chains of theaters that they own, and then you have the whole like distribution and resales of films, whether that's for TV, whether that's for video, theatrical, anywhere they could exploit it and make some money. And it was something that you would get, in cases of, they would go to, if a movie did well at the Cannes Film Festival and somebody had already bought the global rights or like the European rights, North American rights or something, Canon would go in and they would say, did you sell Japan yet? Like, nobody's approached you. Like, we want Asia. And that's what they did. That's, they had contacts in all of these different countries that they could sort of work with whatever was available to resell it in some way and get it somewhere where it might not have otherwise been seen.
Yeah, I don't know how they kept track of all the legalities for a start of who owns what and where they did dealings.
There's I love there's the television marketplace that cropped up in the 80s. It was basically the TV version of the American film market, which was more targeted towards like VHS distribution and things like that in Los Angeles. But there was the TV version, and there's a great Canon ad. It's like, do you need movies for your station or whatever your cable channel? It was for anywhere in the world. Like, come visit the Canon booth, the booth number. We have 900 movies for you to look at, like, available now. And it's just, if you were if you were starting up a your own channel or your own premium channel and anywhere, and you needed something to fill it, you could go and do one-stop shopping at that Canon booth, and you'd have your next 2 years worth of movie, Sunday night movies.
Yeah, definitely. Very clever. So yeah, who wouldn't want to watch Chuck Norris in American Ninja? Or
Yeah, Chuck Norris. Yeah, he was originally announced for American Ninja, and then it got with it. He didn't do it, and it brought us Michael Dudikoff.
yeah,
Launched,
James Dean.
launched Canon's own
Ninja.
homegrown action star.
Yeah, because that was the script that much different for the Chuck one, or is it just silent hero
Oh,
kills lots of other people?
very different. It was actually the Chuck version. The script was Invasion USA. Very, very roundabout story. Yes,
Christmas movie.
it is. It is absolutely. It's not Christmas until Richard Lynch blows up a small, suburban neighborhood outside of Atlanta. So it was something that they had written the movie, and the shortest version of this story is that he did not want to be a ninja. That Chuck Norris did not want to wear a ninja uniform. He didn't want to cover his face. So they wrote the script for what would become Invasion USA based on the idea that his code name was Ninja, and they called it American Ninja. So it was the Invasion USA script, and Menachem got it, read it. He loved the script. He's like, yes, I want to make this Chuck Norris movie, but there's no ninjas. We can't call it American Ninja anymore. So that's how it got. They ended up adding the title Invasion USA, even though it's not really a remake of that movie, but they thought it would have name recognition. The 50s Invasion USA. And an American Ninja got a new script and got Michael Dudikoff, and the rest is history. But yeah, if you wonder what the Chuck Norris American Ninja would have looked like, just imagine Invasion USA if they called him American Ninja. That was his code name.
And then Dudikoff did Avenging Force, which is technically a sequel to Invasion USA.
And another project that Chuck Norris said no to, so Michael Dudikoff got to do it, and it was it's one of my favorite Dudikoff movies. I think that obviously in both those situations it was a good thing that Chuck said no.
So you got the Dutch film bucks here. Hello, sir. So he's got Rescue Me with Dudikoff and Dorf.
That's a pretty late Canon movie, but
I don't know that one.
Michael Dudikoff plays this kind of rough and tumble drifter who helps young Steven Dorff rescue his girlfriend from kidnappers. So it's fun. It's an action comedy.
Okay, yeah, check that out.
Yeah, 50-50. Another.
Yeah, because that was originally going to be, was it Stallone and Kurt Russell's before they did Tango and Cash?
Yeah, they did Tango and Cash instead. And
luckily,
we get Weller and Hayes.
Yeah,
and the fellow from Airplane.
And then POW The Escape is that Steve James, and which Carradine is it? Doesn't narrow it down.
Yeah, that one's David in there. Yeah, Canon was actually, they worked with 4 Carradine family members because you have Robert Carradine in Number One with the Bullets, and you have John Carradine in House of Long Shadows, David Carradine in POW Escape, and Martha Plimpton in Shy People. She's
there you go.
Yeah, so 4 Carradine family members in 4 years. That's they should have had like a stamp card or something to collect them all.
Yeah, you get a discount. So yeah, Dino Orantes, the slightly costume. Yeah,
that's a very fair assessment.
Maybe another book for you there or two.
Yeah, no, I would love somebody to do a DEG De La Rennes Entertainment Group book, because that would be one I'd love to read. And one I would not. I don't see on my docket anytime soon.
Didn't he do Flash Gordon? I wouldn't have a word said against that.
Dune is always the one that there's actually a great book that just came out, and gosh, I'm really doing the author Max Every, a book about the it's an oral history of the making of David Lynch's Dune. It's a fantastic read.
Nice. Now, I don't know this one. American Cyborg Steel Warrior. Is that technically a Canon film?
It is. That was a Boaz Davidson special there. That very, very, very late in Canon's run, really near the end, and there's going to be some fun stories in that one. But
Okay.
a lot of the post-apocalyptic movie, and a lot of it's filmed in what was essentially like a fabric detergent soap factory in Israel that was shut down. And
Okay.
so everybody who was working on this movie was breaking out in rashes and having bad reactions just from spending so much time in like a soap factory dressed in, in like, post-apocalyptic
Leather
post-apocalyptic
chains, whips.
barbarian universe like outfits or like little, cyborg bikinis or whatever you want to call them.
So yeah. So yeah, a lot of advertising was TNA because like the Bolero poster, the Space Vampires posters, they had full nudity on display. Just because I remember the Bolero poster in the video shop, and the tits are out on that in just a
Yeah.
standard shelf.
And that was, gosh, I could be wrong, but I believe the UK quad poster was an experience in ecstasy. Like the tagline in the X was very big. The movie
Yeah.
wasn't actually rated X, but
No.
anytime Canon put the X really big in all of their in their marketing to make it sound like they were releasing an X-rated movie while it was playing in.
There's some naked horseback riding.
Yeah, I mean it's a very hard R, but it's not deserving of the X. It's a stretch.
Yeah, I think it was just an 18 here, so as most things were canon wise. So how many not Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson, is it was it the 4 death wishes, assassination, Kinjiti or whatever it is, I can never pronounce that one.
Murphy's Law,
Murphy's
Messenger
Law.
of Death,
Oh yes.
In the Midnights. They made a lot of movies together, and it was something that it was a good relationship on both sides. Bronson was someone who was in his 60s at that point, and he was having this renaissance as an action star. But he was somebody who was more marketable even at that point. I mean, Death Wish made him finally a headline star here in the US, but he wasn't. He was much bigger in Europe. Somebody that Canon knew that they would just get his name on a project and they could sell these in a lot of territories. And of course they made them simple. So he could make one movie a year pretty much and be paid increasingly large amount for each one. We get to choose his projects, get to choose who he worked with. I mean, Jill Ireland worked with him on some of his wife, but his sons were cast on. He got to handpick Mike Finger and then J. Lee Thompson for movies. He had a lot of control of those films, and he was making them when he wanted, getting what he wanted. And this was a time that Jill Ireland, who his wife for actually quite a long time, but they were raising children together. She was very sick. She was dying of cancer. There was a brief period where she was in remission, but she was very ill, and he was caring for her a lot of this time, and he did not like to be away. So he had his house in LA, but he also had a horse ranch, a giant horse farm in Vermont, which is closer to where I live now. And I've been up there, and it's just a beautiful mountainous region. And he did not want to be away from it. So it was something where I think at that point in his career, he could maintain the lifestyle that he had come accustomed to, keep like building this money, putting this money away for his family and taking care of everything, working in that way. But, being in his late 60s at that point, he would only have to work five weeks out of the year, and they were on the movies that he wanted. And he usually had his wife along as like a co-star, producer, and one or two of the kids working on the film in some way. So they became family vacations. So it was something that both sides, like Canon made money on all their Bronson films. They did very well. Those were always very successful for them. And for him, he was able to dictate what he did and when, and also just, it didn't take away from his his home life as much as, working for a studio that, again, like if you don't want to be on a film set constantly, working for a company that wants to get each day done or each shot done in as few takes as possible, they're who you want to work with. So
Yeah.
it was good. It was good. It was a good relationship for both sides. Like Bronson and Golden Globus were both very happy with how that went.
Yeah, because Death Wish 3 was filmed in London, so I don't know if
most of it, yeah. There's they did a few weeks in East New York, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn.
right.
So, I mean, there's really just some of the street scene, like the scene where the giggler gets shot, and that is actually New York. You can go and stand on that street corner and pretend to shoot the giggler if you want. There's now a barber shop there instead of the convenience store where he gets the ice cream right before murdering somebody. But but then the rest was all in the UK, and so it depends. If you see, I mean, you can tell because New York and London don't really don't look that alike. But if the building's on fire at any point, or something's being blown up, or anything's being blown up, it's happening in the UK.
Yeah.
Because they were really just sort of getting these like street shots and really trying to get a little bit of like exteriors and things to make it look more like New York.
Right. Because you got your picture on the Death Wish 2 steps, or is it Death Wish 1?
Death Wish. That was the first Death Wish.
Yeah, but
I visited some. So my sister, I lived in New York before living here for 18 years, but my sister still lives there. And her apartment at the time was about 3 blocks from where you see Paul Kersey getting his mail order guns. So he goes into a post office, and that was right where she lived. And there's the hill where his girlfriend gets her car pushed. She gets knocked out and pushed down, and the car goes down the hill and blows up.
Oh yeah.
Like that was my sister's neighborhood. So I've got some pictures I put on Twitter and Facebook and things like that of all these locations where I'm standing there and I'm like, this is exactly where her car blew up. And it's West Side Highway.
He is unlucky in love.
Mm-hmm.
Now we spoke of Spider-Man earlier, but I was to say, have you seen the script for Spider-Man? Is it out there or?
Yeah, there are, and that's one that went through so many incarnations. There is the version that Stephen Tolkien worked on, and gosh, I'm blanking on the screenwriters' names, but there's at least 2 versions that you can read out there. Okay. There's a great podcast that I'll find the link and share it. Okay, but they actually did a dramatic reading of one of the Canon podcast scripts with a bunch of different voice actors. It's very fun. But yeah, it's out there that you can Google it and find it. There are several different, and Spider-Man's interesting for them because this was a time they got the rights to it in '84, and Marvel was in serious trouble. The company was about to fold, and they were looking for ways to make some sort of revenue. And Canon was interested. They picked up the rights to Spider-Man and Captain America, and they thought about Hulk. They thought about the Incredible Hulk because they were already working with Ferrigno, but they thought like, oh, no one wants to see that. That's already been on TV. That's like the character's done. But they paid, I believe it was $225,000 for the rights to Spider-Man and Captain America, and it could have been for $1 million. So, again, the numbers I've got the actual numbers written down somewhere, but it was a song where they could have had the in perpetuity, like the rights to the entire Marvel catalog. And they didn't want it because they didn't think any of these other characters had any sort of like, nobody would want to see that. Like, no, who cares about these silly, like these are children's things. And they kind of saw it like, so they wanted Captain America because they thought they wanted something that can compete with Superman. And Menachem didn't really know these characters so well. He kind of saw like, what is America going to eat up like next, like Superman like character? Well, Captain America, he's got the shield. He looks very patriotic. Menachem very famously thought Spider-Man was kind of like Wolfman. He thought it was a teen who turned into a spider, a giant tarantula, like kid, and so that was what he bought. It was like Spider-Man was a toss-in. Like for like 50 grand more, you can also have this character, and he misunderstood who and what Spider-Man was.
Oh,
So that's why you see like the very first advertisements where it's Toby Hooper is listed as the director, because Menachem thought it was a horror like property. He thought it was something scary, and Toby knew who Spider-Man was. Like at least Toby Hooper was a little wiser, but yeah, it was something that it was. There was not like these weren't seen as something that would be like have film potential. That was that like Canon got those rights because Marvel shopped them, and so many other people said no. New World ended up getting most of the rights later, like about a year later, for and owning them for a while. But you look back, and that's why Spider-Man, even to this day, was so screwed. Like the rights were so screwed up because
right.
it was this basically this option that Menachem Golan held on to for a long time, even as James Cameron was trying to make the movie in the early '90s with Carolco, and it was yeah. It was because no Marvel needed money. Nobody wanted these characters, and
Crazy.
you're working down the list. Canon's not going to be the company you go to when you're hoping to get the highest amount. Canon is the company you go to when you're really at the end of your list, when you're willing to take whatever they'll give you. But yeah,
Who made that? That's right.
It would have been interesting, but it was definitely something that Canon, they didn't like. Spider-Man especially was a very like it would have been weird. It would have been very weird. I guess
It would have been after Superman 4 or that level.
Yeah, they wisely at least brought people on who understood the character. So the screenplay that you'll read, that the Ted Newsom, sorry, that was the writer I was trying to think of, the Ted Newsom script.
Yeah.
You can find that. You can Google it and read it, and it's a pretty good origin story of Ted Newsom, John Percotta. Yeah, thank you. That's one that is a pretty solid Spider-Man origin story. I don't know how Canon would have made it without ripping out half the pages and Superman 4ing the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of.
Because there was no budget at that time. But there's so many stories behind that one. That's a project that I loved. I mean, and another one that you can kind of read and find out about, and is kind of mind-boggling, is I mentioned earlier the Michael Winner Captain America, but Michael Winner was somebody who did not understand the character and didn't care. Like he got the assignment, and basically by charming like the Marvel people he was working with, they're like, he sounds great and he's good for this. He's made these gritty like New York Death Wish movies. He can make a movie set in New York, and so Michael Winner completely like wrote his own origin story, came up with his own villains and things like that. It would have been something that if somebody was a big Captain America fan in the 80s and that movie had been made, it would have been unrecognizable. The script it's hilarious. It's
because who made the other Captain America in the early 90s was Salinger.
That was Menachem Golan. When Menachem Golan left Canon, part of his package deal was he got 21st century film productions.
There you go.
And he took some of the rights with him. And Albert Pune, who great director, acquired taste for some people, but he knew Spider-Man, he knew Captain America, and when Menachem was packing his boxes and kind of going through this messy divorce with his cousin as he was being pushed out of Canon, he got to take certain properties and certain projects, and Albert personally asked Menachem to bring those two movies because he wanted to make them, and Spider-Man, again, like Spider-Man did not happen, but Captain America did, and I think it gives you an indication of what a early movies Albert Pune directed Spider-Man looked like. Let's just look at the Matt Salinger Captain America.
So yeah, this is one we haven't touched on. Runaway Train, which is the best Canon film by most people's opinions. Was that?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Was it up for an Oscar? I'm trying to think now.
Yeah, it was up for 3 actually.
Yeah.
2 acting Oscars for both Voight and Roberts, and then for editing.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic film. It's one that you recommend anybody. It's definitely an underseen gem, and
Yeah.
based on a script by Akira Kurosawa, which is incredible. That's one that the screenplay for that one, the very first one, and again, it's one you can read it out there, but the first script that Canon greenlit was 240 pages. So it was greatly, like, some of the, you see 4 writers credited on it, and
Right.
those one guy was basically translating Kurosawa's script, and the other 3 guys were whittling it down to like an actual,
Yeah, 90-minute film. So yeah, what happened? How did they get that one so right?
Yeah, well, that's one that's, again, like, you find a good filmmaker who's able to work in the budget, or work within the budget you give them, and you let them make the project they want to make. It was Andrei Konchalovsky, who, Soviet filmmaker, and he made several films for Canon, with Maria's Lovers, Duet for One, and Shy People,
Right.
As well. But great filmmaker who worked for Tarkovsky, which is like he co-wrote Andrei Rublev. So like all these great films. So very talented guy. And Canon bankrolled this movie. They let him shoot it in Alaska. Originally, he wanted to shoot it in Alaska, and they said no. They let him shoot it, I believe, in North Dakota, but there wasn't enough snow. They could only do so many. I think it was like flaked dried potatoes for making mashed potatoes. And after 2 days, they gave up, and Canon was like, "Okay, you know what? Go to Alaska, do it how you want to do it." And yeah, it's just a film that, I mean, they were pretty hands off. And again, when you have somebody who can make a good movie on, in the time and with the money that they can give you, magic happens. There are a handful of movies that aren't just good Canon movies, but you genuinely great films. And Runaway Train is a great one. It was up for 3 Oscars, and had they not pushed it so late, maybe it would have even had a better chance, because I think it was released in late December. It wasn't screened until December for anybody. So a lot of something I love is what Canon did to try to push their chances with it better, is they called up a lot of the elderly, like the very older Academy voters, some of these guys who, actors and directors who'd worked in the silent era, that were, they were still Academy voters, but they were in, assisted living homes and things like that. And they would go to the nursing homes with a projector and everything and screen it for like these 5 or 6 old. They would just do that. They went all over Hollywood just trying to get people to see it, because they had a hard time getting people to come see it at Canon, the Canon offices. But when they brought the movies to the assisted living facilities, they kind of had a captive audience. It's a good film. I mean, I not any of them were disappointed.
Yeah, they didn't see Firewalker the same way then. Doctor Impossible, Thunder Alley. What's? Yeah, I don't remember that one, but it's one from the local.
Yeah, that's Rock and Roll in Tucson, Arizona.
Right.
It's again, it's a movie that does not it gets overlooked. It hasn't had a DVD release, at least in the US. I don't know if over in anywhere on that side of the Atlantic, but yeah, you've got to see it on a bad stream or the VHS tape, and so it gets overlooked. It's one of these movies, if it were a little bit more accessible, or hadn't gone 40 years without a legit way to see it, more people would talk about it. It's got some good music. It's a fairly predictable story, but you have some some cool stuff, and the writer director actually based a lot of it on his own experiences, like as a musician in Tucson. So that's why a lot of it was filmed there. So because Canon would shoot movies in places that didn't see a lot of movies being shot there.
So who owns the rights to all these films now that could make some money by just having a Canon box set or something?
Yeah, they're all over the place.
I thought so.
So yeah, MGM owns most of them. So that's now Amazon.
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of these are kind of popping up very slowly in at least DVD quality transfers on Amazon Prime here in the US.
Okay.
The bulk of them are with MGM. There's a small number that are with Warner Brothers that are I think it's about 20 titles that they had gotten the rights to as part of the whole Superman 4 over the top deal. So you have a selection with Warner's, and then there are some that are just very, very murky rights where Canon co-produced them with a company in Italy and a company in the Netherlands. And if you ever wanted to release it, there would be so much you'd have to disentangle to figure out. And that's the same reason why I think a lot of these movies would be hard to, from an intellectual property standpoint, like I don't imagine we'd see an American Ninja like Amazon series or something, because Canon sold the rights in so many different ways somewhere. It's hard to go and bring back one of these properties without somebody, raising their hand and being like, I own this character in this territory or this and that. And so yeah, they are all over the place. But MGM, the easiest way to answer that is MGM, most of it, Warner Brothers, some of it, and then probably 10% of it. Who the heck knows if there's like any way of disentangling like the ownership across multiple countries and companies.
Yeah, I guess there's a few stuff like Nana. Are we going to see a Blu-ray of that? The amount of effort it would take per sale would not be worth the effort, would it?
Yeah, it would be a lot of, and there's a couple that have come out that had kind of weird that you'd never expect weird rights issues, and unfortunately, I don't think they were big sellers for any of the companies that put them out. So there has to be a demand, which is unfortunate. But again, like I'm getting surprised. There is a lot of stuff that I never thought I'd see 5 years ago that's now on Blu-ray.
It's like I watched Last American Virgin for the first time a few years ago, and it's like, oh, it's Porky's for the first half, and then it takes a severe handbrake turn and goes off in a very dark direction.
Yeah, and then it stabs you right in the heart right there at the end too. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought, oh, Canon does Porky's. I'll watch that.
That's another one that people. That's one people I think they do love, and people who saw it remember it and have, they're still mad at Diane Franklin, 40 years later for that movie. But yeah, that's a great one. But that's one that did not have a great Blu-ray release for a long time here. Yeah. I think I think there was a UK one like 4 or 5 years before we got. A few of these movies I've actually had to import. A Runaway Train was the one that Arrow put out over there, and there was nothing stateside until Kino Lorber put it out here like a year or two ago.
Yeah, because I watched Exterminator 1 and 2 last week, and then the second film is piss poor, but and then of course he's not Ginty's not in it that much. Because just have some guy with a mask and a flamethrower taking people out. But the story was all over the place because it is chopped up. Mm-hmm. But he has as much luck with people as Bronson does in Death Wish films.
Yeah. It is the original version would be. I would love to see that. I don't know if it's out there. It actually would not have been a finished film.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people have the impression that they redid the film, but it was too short. I think there were 65 minutes or something in that original version. So it was something. It was not a distribution, so which is why so much was added. It was changed and things like that. It was, Canon would give director, 3/4 or 2/3 of the time that he needed to make the movie. And every once in a while, a director would only deliver 2/3 of a movie because it was that, it's just working at a normal pace of making movies. And I think Exterminator 2 was one of that. It was just too short. Yeah. But I would love to see, there are scenes, especially you can see them in the trailer, you can see them in the like lobby cards and press notes and things like that. A lot of the advertising for that movie was scenes that weren't in the movie. And but here's the bummer is Canon, I fear they were a company that would not pay for film storage when a dumpster was much cheaper. So people wonder about, there's a bunch of, like, you watch the trailer for Ninja 3: The Domination, and there's like a lot of cool stuff you see in that's not in the movie. And the same, there's shots from Revenge of the Ninja that are in the trailer that aren't in the finished movie. And the deleted scenes probably don't exist, unfortunately, unless somebody, cared enough to take them home and store them nicely and things like that. Canon, when they needed a room,
I can imagine.
A dumpster.
Oh, that's upsetting. This one's I remember seeing this trailer up for Surrender back in the day. It was on every Warner's video. I remember it on every Warner's video at the time. Advert for Surrender, but I don't think I've only seen it once, but like you said, I don't remember them being tied together naked.
That's another one that's not really available on home video. You can actually get it through some legitimate streaming services now, but never a DVD or Blu-ray, I believe. But it's Michael Caine and Sally Field, and they're both great actors, and they're having fun in this kind of, this mismatched romantic comedy. Yeah, there's the great scene where they're at this fancy gala, and armed gunmen come in and strip everyone naked, and that's how they meet each other, and that's how they sort of fall in love. And the cute meet, I guess they call that in a rom-com. They're stripped naked and tied together, and it's definitely I agree with that. It's a good movie, and it's one of the few that Michael Caine was associated with them. He ended up making Bullseye with Roger Moore for 21st Century Productions for Monocom years later, but Michael Caine actually he ended up being associated with Canon and making that because they had wanted him to star in Gunga Din, a remake of Gunga Din with Roger Moore. Actually, that's the two of them doing the Michael Winter movie together all those years later. But so Michael Caine would go in and have meetings about Gunga Din every now and then, and that wouldn't happen, never happened, and ended up doing Surrender instead. That's how a lot of Canon movies came about. Let's have a meeting about this movie, and then when we don't get the budgeting, we don't get the pre-sales for it, we'll just find something else for you to do instead while you're here.
I can imagine what those do. So I'll wrap this up. I'll just put the link in the chat again for your books, or 2 books so far. So let's go on to the third book. It's going to have Bloodsport, Cyborg, Alien from LA, King Lear, Going Bananas, Hero on the Terror, Platoon Leader, Conginte, Rockula, and Lambada as some of the films coming up. Those are some. The Lambada chapter is one that I'm especially proud of. I am very excited to get that out there for people to read, because that was a fun. That's going to be the selling point, isn't it? Lambada.
Remember Lambada? You need this book.
The Dance of Love.
Forbidden Dance.
So is that out for Christmas? Can I get that now?
No. No. But I want to have it finished before Christmas next year if everything goes well. It's going to be a long book, and I wrote about half of the second one before I looked for a publisher for the first. So I had such a head start, and I did not have that benefit this time around. So there's going to be a longer wait between 2 and 3 than there was between 1 and 2.
Okay. So have you interviewed anyone for that one yet, or are they still on there?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of interviews in the books for that one. A lot of people that I've spoken to in the previous books, I'd also done interviews with them for these other things. So you'll see people like David Mendenhall and Sam Furstenberg appearing in there. But there are some that I'm pretty excited about. Some associated with some of the Van Damme movies and things like that are some fun stories. And again, like these stories are as crazy as some of the movies.
Have you reached out to like Chuck Norris and such?
So Chuck, I would love to talk to him someday. I've never had any luck, and he's not somebody who really, like, he's never turned up on a DVD or anything like that. I think
he's not done any interviews or anything really, has he?
No, and there are people who I think they just kind of like forward focused. They don't like I've encountered people like that where I don't want to keep dwelling on like
Sure.
So it'd be someone I'd love to. I would love.
Yeah. Well, I know he's doing conventions now, which I don't think he's done before.
I'd love to talk to you, but he's somebody that I've reached out to, and like someday, hopefully, maybe.
Yeah.
Keep trying. Keep trying every few months.
Yeah, he's got a new film coming out next year, I think.
Yeah.
So
he's back. He's back acting again. So
yeah, because it's like Expendables 2 was the last one he was in, or something.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, but in the other front, I have said this before, but I did get a chance to talk a little bit to Van Damme. So I've got some Van Damme, some of the the famous his stories from Canon that I made sure to get his like side of it, which I'm excited to have in there.
Nice.
So,
all right, well, we'll leave it at that. We'll just go for this. I will keep a lookout for that third book. Yep. Maybe we'll chat again next Christmas for the third book.
Thank you.
If not, we'll keep in touch anyways. But thanks to Austin for joining us. Check out
thank
his
you
book.
for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Educational and fun.
And a great bunch of great group in the chat. Lots of good questions.
Yeah, a lot of experts on Canon in the chat.
That's awesome. Awesome. Good to meet all of you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for everyone for joining me, and I'll wish you good night, everyone. And until next time.